How's everyone doing? It's been a crazy week. Well, one of the things that is always comforting to me is good music, and just putting on a record and losing yourself in it really helps. I've been listening to music that I would just describe as more warming and nurturing. But this countdown idea of the best American bands started before our big event here in the United States on Tuesday. And Mazzy actually said that I already did it in his video, and I didn't. I didn't even know about it. But I felt like I had to reply, and it does feel a little different, I must say, doing this now versus maybe how I would have done it a week ago. But this is my top 20 American bands. Now, some of these, especially my 20 to 15, are they were almost honorable mentions because they're bands. Now, I'm into all these bands. I'm into every single one of these. But some of these bands, I felt like, well, how could you have a list and not have that on there? And you'll see a lot more of that. It's a lot of 60s music, a little bit older. And yeah, so that's on there. But let's get started. It's my top 20. I'm trying to be objective to a point. Every one of these, I can argue that they should be considered the best American band or one of the best. And I'm sure there's other bands that can make the list. These are just my 20. So let's get started. At number 20 is CCR. Now, if you would have told me a few years ago that I would have Clearance Clearwater Revival on my top 20 American bands, I would have said, oh yeah, I guess if I really think about it. But I have really come to like these guys. I mean, real recently too. It changed for me a little bit about 10 years ago maybe, and I bought Green River and I was amazed how good it was. But just recently I've gotten into Cosmos Factory, this one, Bayou Country, and also Willie and the Poor Boys. And especially this one is just really hitting the sweet spot with Born on the Bayou, and just the guitar sound of it and the subject matter, just sort of the bluesy kind of feel to it. Yeah, I'm really digging it a lot. I'm really digging Clearance Clearwater Revival, and I'll probably be listening to a lot more of CCR. Also, they're very topical about America. You know, some of these bands sing about America, and CCR is definitely one of them with Proud Mary, Fortunate Son, a lot of their hits. Okay, I'm going to do my best to keep track of the numbers on here. This is number 19. This is the Beach Boys. Almost didn't include Beach Boys on here when I was trying to get it down to 15, because I kind of consider the Beach Boys a better idea than the reality. And I also kind of consider them a vocal group. Did the Beach Boys play on this record? I don't think so. I think it was mostly Brian Wilson and Hired Guns that played on it. Now, certainly vocally they were on it, but I don't always view them as a great band. Do I think seeing the Beach Boys in concert back in the day would have been like a killer event that I should try to travel back in time if possible and see? No, I don't feel like I missed out. For the most part, I'm glad I grew up when I did. I feel like I saw amazing bands, and a lot of people are like, wouldn't you have loved to live in a different? Not really. I'm pretty happy with all the killer bands I got to see. So, anyway, let's go to number 18. Number 18 is the Byrds. Again, kind of one of those bands like you just kind of have to put it on here. I do love the Byrds. The problem I have with the Byrds is which Byrds? I mean, it almost seems like a name of a corporation where the CEO comes in and gets changed out and changes the direction drastically. And it's like, is it still the Byrds? Do you like the Byrds? Which Byrds? Love the early Byrds, and I'm discovering some of the later stuff I like as well. So I always loved Sweetheart of the Rodeo. It sounds absolutely nothing like this record. So, that's an example. And then, Graham Parson leaves, and then they get his brother in there. I don't know. I have a hard time even following who's in the Byrds from record to record. At number 17, Grateful Dead. Kind of like CCR, actually more than that. If you had told me that I would have the Grateful Dead on a list of the best American bands, I would have told you were high and you had done too much circle dancing and probably taken too much acid, because Grateful Dead used to annoy the hell out of me, and it took me forever to warm up to this record or to accept it as being something I should really listen to. I should really give a fair shot. This record and Working Man's Dead and Europe 72 have totally changed my mind. I've realized that I like Garcia. I don't think I'm ever going to like those thin sounding bootleg tapes. I don't think I'm ever going to get into the jamming. but I really like the songs that they were creating around this time period, and especially the Garcia ones and Phil Lesh, who we sadly lost recently. Box of Rain, that kicks this off this record, is fantastic. And I find that this album is just such a good album to put on in the morning. It's very positive, and it was the soundtrack for several mornings for me in the last year. So at number 16, Iggy and the Stooges, or the Stooges. Just great band out of Detroit. I mean, kind of a proto-punk band. I mean, how could rock and roll, American rock and roll, exist without Iggy Pop and the Stooges? So they qualify as a band because it's the Stooges. I should have said that up front. There's no Neil Young and Crazy Horse. There's no so and so and so and so. If it has a solo artist name in it, or a person's name in it, and whoever, it's automatically not included on this list. I should mention who already did them, because you should check them out. Digital Gramophone, Mazzy, Dark Stuff, and Long Cut, that I can think of right off my head. At number 15, we have Yola Tango. Great band out of Hoboken, New Jersey. Male-female kind of vocal thing going on with Ira and Georgia, a married couple. Kind of velvet sounding, also very Sonic Youth in a way. They can get very noisy. They can also be very delicate. They can play amazing acoustic music. I've seen acoustic shows by them where, I was with somebody that could not imagine them rocking out the way that they would on like an album like Painful, or most shows you see with them are sort of divided between either like really rockin' stuff and more abstract stuff, or more stripped down acousticy beautiful things and more loud and abrasive stuff. But they write really good songs. They're kind of underrated in a way. They're out there. They're fabric that weaves through our lives. I mean, their music is used a lot, or was used a lot, for NPR. A lot of interludes you'd hear Yola Tango. And they can do a cover song, I think, like no one else, too. So that is number 15. Number 14, Flaming Lips. I haven't seen this on anybody's list. I haven't seen Yola Tango either. Flaming Lips, just really great band from Oklahoma City. A lot of what's great about these American bands, especially more recent ones, I would say recent in the 90s, 80s and on, honestly, is that they're not always centered in these big cities. They're not always centered in New York or LA or San Francisco. They could be from anywhere, and this band's from Oklahoma City, and they were a great rock band. I mean, they were fantastic around the time of Transmissions from a Satellite Heart and Clouds Taste Metallic, and then they switched around quite a bit when I forget his name, the guitarist left, and they kind of became a different band. The drummer, Steven, had more of a role as a multi-instrumentalist, and became more of the band that they are today with Soft Bulletin and this one, which I think these two records, along with the other two I mentioned, are just fantastic. Really positive too. I heard Do You Realize in my car on Wednesday, and I must say it was like a ray of sunshine that I really needed to hear. So yeah, number 14 is The Flaming Lips. At number 13, we have Sonic Youth. Sonic Youth, kind of like Yola Tango, Kim and Thurston were married. Great kind of noise band from New York City, but also wrote some great songs. None of these artists would be on my list if they weren't writing great songs too. This is probably my favorite album, Goo. Love this album cover too. It's so iconic. Great album, probably my favorite. I also really like Dirty and Thousand Leaves I really like as well, and of course Daydream Nation. So number 12, Van Halen. If you know me well, if you've seen some of my videos, I was a complete kind of Van Halen freak when I was a kid, and for good reason. I mean, the thing about Van Halen, the reason why they're on this list, is because they represent fun. They are one of the funnest bands you could possibly listen to coming from the United States, and maybe had to be a certain age for it. And to me, it's not about Eddie Van Halen and his flashy guitar stuff, or even David Lee Roth, as much as a combination of those four, including those two, and just the fun rockin' music. And they knew that they created, and they certainly knew how to write a good song. Yeah, this is kind of an underdog for them, and on a lot of days, including today, I would probably say this is my favorite album of theirs. Van Halen, Women and Children First. Okay, at number 11, I don't actually have any vinyl from these guys. I had all their records on a CD. I just haven't replaced them, primarily because I don't really listen to them anymore. And that is Nirvana. I do have this box set still, and I think I have In Utero on CD still too. Yeah, not much needs to be said about Nirvana. They blew everything wide open for people that were bands that were doing indie rock, alternative rock, and blew the gates wide open. They capitalized on a lot of what was already being done. Kurt's suicide wrecked him for me, honestly. I identified a little too much and it scared me, and I couldn't listen to them anymore without knowing or thinking about what happened. So push comes to shove. No, actually, just wide open. My favorite has always been In Utero. It's the one that really made me a fan too. I didn't get into Nevermind as much as everybody else did. I thought it was good, a little overproduced for my taste at the time. But yeah, number 11, Nirvana. Number 10 for me is Jane's Addiction. And I know some people are like, how can you put that in front of Nirvana? Well, they're more important to me, and it's my list. So I love Jane's Addiction. If you were 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old, I don't know, 17 years old, whatever. If you were around that age, between like 1988 and 1991, when they were around in their heyday, and you caught Jane's Addiction, or you heard of Jane's Addiction, you got this album, you got Nothing Shocking, you got that first album, you know what I'm talking about. There was some just total chemistry there, and just this merge of punk with sort of metal and this artiness, weirdness in the lyrics, and Perry Farrell, and just so much energy, and it rocked. I mean, you could turn this up in the car. You could also like just lie in your bed and zone out to some of the songs. But great band. Jane's Addiction is in my countdown as number 10. Number 9, the Pixies. Very important band to me out of Boston. Love the harmonies that they did between Black Francis and Kim Deal. I noticed it especially when I saw them live in 1991. Choosing this record, some of these records I'm picking because they're just like the less common ones, so like why not just show them. This is Bossa Nova. This happens to be the first Pixies album that I bought new, anticipating a new Pixies record. But the funny thing is, I didn't even know the record was out. I didn't know it had a title. I didn't even know they were working on one. But of course, I was already in Doolittle and Surfer Rosa and Come On Pilgrim when I went to a record store in Madison and saw that they had a new record. Things like that used to happen back before we were all so connected to information. I do love this album. I do have a soft spot for it. I love the song Allison. I have college memories of just, it's such a short song, and this girl that I knew, we would just crank it up and we would just sing along to it for like, and lose our minds for like a minute and a half or 2 minutes, however long it is. I think you have so much fun. But anyway, yeah, I think the Pixies definitely are in my list as one of the best American bands. Number Big Star. Great songwriters out of Memphis. Chris Bell, Alex Chilton. Really good songs and great production. This should have been a big hit. And for me, it's a song. Certain songs they can rock out for sure, but also certain songs like 13 and September Girls that just totally do it for me. Drive-By Truckers. It's hard to think of another band on this list. I don't think there is one that writes about America as much as the Drive-By Truckers do. A southern band, kind of from Alabama, but also Athens, Georgia. 2 main songwriters, Patterson Hood and Mike Cooley. Wrote about the duality of the southern thing, as they call it, with some albums like Southern Rock Opera. For me, things are really start to get interesting around Decoration Day and Dirty South. And then, some of these later albums, like this one, is an extremely political record. Really kind of describes the era we're in, and we're about to get a lot deeper into now. This came out right before the 2016 election, and they broke their own rule by not having Wes Freed artwork, which is so iconic for them, on their album cover, but instead had a flag at half-mast. Drive-By Truckers, and the name of this album is American Band. So, hey, should be on the list. It is on my list, and yeah, it comes in at, what did I say, At number 6 for me is Guided by Voices. Band out of Dayton, Ohio. Friends that would get together, drink a lot of beer, and record music in their basements. Self-finance their records for years, take out loans, put them out, build these cool collages. Lead singer Robert Pollard, main songwriter, would always kind of put these interesting collages together and just do it because they loved it. Guitar based rock and roll, some of the catchiest songs, and such good songs. The production does not hinder it. In fact, I think on albums like this one and Alien Lanes, the lo-fi production actually helps everything. It just creates a mood that's all their own. Some of the best rock and roll shows too. Like sometimes bands just come along and change the game or remind you of how simple and how powerful a good rock and roll band can be, and Guided by Voices are certainly that for me. This is B1000, like I said. The other one I really love is the one that got me into them, which is Alien Lanes, which is a follow-up to this one. Number five is the Ramones. I've been on quite the Ramones kick. I did a video about it recently. I really need to watch Vinyl Richie's second one when he gets into the 80s. I saw the first one. And by the way, he's done this countdown too. I should have mentioned him earlier. I love this band. I was lucky enough to see them in 89 or 90. It might have been 90. I rediscovered, maybe I had never really given it a real fair shake before this album. I mentioned in another video that I thought it was a crappy copy, and it turns out it's not at all, or maybe my turntable's way better. I don't know. But it absolutely blew me away recently. Such good writers of songs, such good pop craftsmen. It's amazing to me that they weren't bigger than they were, and they started punk. They certainly inspired all the stuff, most of the stuff that happened in the UK and countless bands afterwards. So yeah, number 5 for me is the Ramones. Number 4 is Wilco. This is the album that got me into Wilco. I had have a friend that works at a record store, and she had given me this, and I remember playing this on a Sunday morning with my roommate, and we were just like, what is this? And double record, and we just could not believe how good it was, how warm it was. Yeah, it just sounded like something we didn't even know we needed. It was so like soothing, and then I was able to catch them like twice on that fall of 1996 tour in Minneapolis. I think they came through twice around that time. And I remember thinking, wow, this is a band that this is a songwriter, and this is a band that could be around for a long time, and I can't wait to see what else they'll do. And it's really crazy now to think back all these years later and like all these albums we have by them, and some of them are just fantastic. This original lineup, of course, didn't last that long, but the other lineup, the more solid one that's been around forever now, are quite good too. So yeah, number 4 for me is Wilco. Number 3, Velvet Underground. I mean, a lot of these bands kind of trace things back to the Velvet Underground, whether it's noisier bands like Sonic Youth, Yola Tango to some extent, or Yola Tango on the quieter songs, and bands like r.e.m. I mean, r.e.m. got me in. They were the gateway to tons of stuff for me, but they had mentioned the first Velvet Underground album as being a huge influence, and of course I got that wrong, and I bought the third album because it's called the Velvet Underground, self-titled, thought that was the first. Anyway, I got all of them pretty quickly, and featuring this one because it's just, it doesn't get talked a lot about, and it's one that I bought real recently on vinyl and rediscovered it and loved how good it sounded too. But key song for me on this is probably Rock and Roll, and then Sweet Jane, of course. Even Doug Yule is I think a very important member of this band, and I kind of hate the way that he gets sidelined on some documentaries and some talk about the Velvet Underground. Who loves the sun? Who doesn't love Doug Yule on that song? I do. So anyway, number 3 is the Velvet Underground. Number 2, The Replacements. Unbelievable songwriter in Paul Westerberg, Dylan, Leonard Cohen, Lou Reed. I think he's right up there with those. He's so real. What he writes about is so raw and real. You can just feel it. You can feel it in the people you meet, especially living in Minneapolis, going to some of these places that he references or they hung out at. Great rock and roll band with a little bit of a punk edge to it, kind of inspiring a lot of people in indie world, alternative rock. Great sound that was kind of all their own. And each album's a little bit different. They start to get a little bit more commercial as they go on. And then they sort of turn things upside down a little bit with their last record, where it's almost like a Westerberg solo record, but I think is equally as good as some of their earlier stuff. But anyway, this is the one, Tim. Unbelievable for me, and it sounds absolutely wonderful on the new remastered or remixed box set. And I think it's the strongest collection of songs that they have. So featured that one. Okay, number one, if you know me well, you probably know what this is. This is a little band, the little band from Athens, Georgia that could, r.e.m. I mean, a lot of the circuits that bands started touring, indie bands, were kind of trailblazed by them and a few other bands like Husker Du and the Minutemen, and starting to play these smaller places around the U.S., kind of getting this circuit going. These guys also came from a small college town, Athens, Georgia. I always stuck with Athens, Georgia, with exceptions maybe later on, but for the most part, I think all the members still have houses there. But anyway, they had a sound all their own, very mysterious and kind of murky lyrics. You didn't really know what Stipe was saying. Yeah, I don't think he did. Great guitar band, kind of sounded like very Byrds influenced, but also just incredibly like their own, really creating their own world. When I got into them, it seemed like every album was a slightly different world. Murmur and Reckoning sound quite different. Reckoning and Fables sound quite different. Fables in this album sound quite different. This album and Document, sort of like politically like out there, more direct, are similar content, but they sound quite different too. And of course, things really change when you get to Out of Time. It's just kind of turning the world upside down a little bit, and then pulling things back and really writing introspective songs for Automatic for the People, doing things on their terms, not making videos they didn't want to make videos, not lip syncing if they didn't want to lip sync, not chasing the charts but waiting till the charts came to them, and inspiring a generation of people to pay attention to environmental issues, political issues. And to me, after seeing a bunch of arena shows and seeing them the first time, they reminded me how much fun a rock show could be and how immediate it could feel. And sort of like you could do this yourself kind of vibe too, because they did come from a college town. They just kind of paved a different way, but they could really rock live, and they put on some amazing shows. And this has always been kind of my favorite period, this album and Document, although there's so many different periods with this band, and they're incredibly versatile, and that's part of the reason. I could probably go on and on about why they come in for me at number one. Also, it's all about the songs. They have killer songs, and they've always done things right. I said that before, but they divided their songwriting. They avoided a lot of the issues that would plague other bands, and thank God they did, because they lasted for 15 albums. And people are kind of hankering for a reunion right now, but they're even doing that on their own terms. They're like, no, we broke up. I think they respect it too much. And we can just look at their legacy, and it's an amazing legacy. Pick a couple albums, pick a year. I mean, they were around for a long time, and they put out 15 killer records, a great B-sides collection, an EP, and a couple live albums. So r.e.m. That's my countdown of the top 20 American bands. Please list yours in the comments or do a response video to this one. It's been fun to think about the best American bands. And like I said, I think music's going to start playing an even more important role in all of our lives. So thanks, everyone.